It's time for final assembly of the nearly perfect safari rifle. There are lots of parts. Let's see if I can remember where they all go. I'll begin with the stock. The grip cap is installed with a properly fitted screwdriver to prevent damaging the slot. Then the rear sling swivel. It's a little tight, so I'll scrape out the finish. Tap it in and tighten the screws. The butt pad is installed with a bit of soap on the screws. This prevents damage to the pad as they slip through. Next, I'll need to screw the action onto the barrel. A piece of tape is used around the barrel to protect the finish. Oak bushings, along with some powdered rosin, are placed around the barrel, then everything is clamped in the barrel vise. To prevent the barrel from rotating, I want the vise as tight as possible. The recoil lug is placed on the barrel, carefully aligning the witness mark made when we first installed the barrel. Then the receiver is threaded on, hand tight, using a bit of anti-seize on the threads. I start by securing the top half of the action wrench to the receiver. Tape on the receiver will protect the finish. I'm using a 1/4-28 machine screw in the front action screw hole. Now I can align the cutout in the wrench for the recoil lug and tighten the bolts. The witness marks on the receiver, lug, and barrel must be carefully aligned. This ensures that the headspace is correct and the barreled action will fit back into the stock. The front sight has quite a few pieces. First, the hood, pivot plunger, and spring are installed, making sure to line up the recess with the retaining screw. It must be below the surface for the front sight to slide in. The spring and plunger are dropped into the recess, and the front sight gently tapped in until the plunger engages the hole in the sight. Now the hood. It uses very thin washers to protect the finish and provide smooth operation. The rear sight is slid into place with a bit of oil, and both the base screw and sight retainer screw tightened. The sight notch will be filed in at the range. The trigger is next. It's held in place by 2 pins. The sear spring is installed in the trigger body, and the shorter front pin is drifted in using a wooden Q-tip as a slave pin. I make sure the sear pivots freely and the sear spring is still in place. The longer rear pin secures the back of the sear as well as the bolt stop and spring. The pin is drifted partially in, then the bolt stop spring and bolt stop are installed. The pin is tapped through both parts. A quick check ensures the bolt stop and sear operate without binding. The plug screws are installed again, making sure to use the right screwdriver bit as the slots are easily damaged. Now to the bolt. First, the ejector, spring, and pin. With the bolt body in the vise, the spring is dropped into the hole and the notch in the ejector is lined up with the retaining pin hole. The ejector is carefully pushed down with a dummy round and the pin drifted into position. The 3-position safety bolt shroud is next. First, the spring, bolt plunger, and retaining screw are placed in the shroud. The flat on the plunger must be aligned with the retaining screw. Then the safety plunger, spring, safety lever, and cross screw. Using a mink bolt tool, the shroud is threaded on, followed by the firing pin spring and firing pin. Tightening the tool will compress the firing pin spring, exposing the end of the firing pin. I make sure that the cutout for the safety is in the correct position, then slide on the cocking piece and drive in the retaining pin. Now with the safety on, I can release the pressure on the spring. This will allow the firing pin assembly to be screwed into the bolt body. A quick check of the action using a dummy round shows that everything works fine. The trigger is fully adjustable for sear engagement, pull weight, and over travel. I've set this one just the way I like it. The magazine box is secured to the action by a screw, making sure the box is fully seated in the action. A bit of oil on the metal surfaces then the spring and follower are dropped into the magazine box and the stock placed onto the barreled action. The guard is placed in the stock and the front and rear action screws dropped in. Then both are tightened firmly against the pillars. The middle screw is tightened just enough to hold the guard in place. Once all the parts are back together, I check to make sure everything functions properly. The last item on the receiver is the scope bases. A little blue Loctite and then torquing them to 30 inch-pounds will hold them securely under the toughest safari conditions. The bottom half of the rings are installed and the scope is laid in place. The scope is positioned as far forward as possible to give the maximum amount of eye relief. This will help prevent scope cuts to the forehead. More blue Loctite on the ring screws. Then the scope is checked again to make sure the eye relief is correct. The last step is to level the gun, level the scope, then torque the ring screws to 15 inch-pounds. Well, pretty satisfying to get a gun to this point.